Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mike in the Asylum with your host, Sydney Cisneros.
Liam Grant,
Jesse Netto,
and Ron Van Busker.
We're sitting in a different order.
Yes, it is weird. Join us this time around as we talk about some of our favorite horror movies. Today was my pick for my homecoming to the podcast, and I chose John Carpenter's Village of the Damned, which came out in 1995.
Yep.
And is a remake of an older film,
From 1960.
Yes, from the 60s.
which was based off of a book.
It was actually 1960 to be exact.
Oh, so it is the early 60s.
Yep.
I was gonna. I was
sorry.
Never mind. Train of thought gone.
All right.
Let's go.
We want to do first impressions?
Yes, and I guess I'll start with mine.
That's what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, we are recording with Sid out in California.
Yes,
so
we are.
This is our first
so-
trial run, so hopefully it goes well, guys.
Woo!
So be aware of any weird finagles that happen during this
Yeah.
episode.
So since it was your pick, we'll go ahead and start with Liam, and then we'll go Jesse, then me, and then
All right,
you be the
finish on
last.
me.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
it's kind of not my favorite movie. Like
I wouldn't expect this to be your favorite.
I demand
movie.
every
good
movie
thing.
we watch to be our favorite movie.
well, it's like the movie's not bad, but
It's
I'm
but it's not what I expect.
Yeah, it's not like something. It's like it doesn't have the stuff that makes me like super excited to go like watch the movie a second time or anything like that. Like,
That really sucks then.
really?
Yeah. Well, if you don't want to revisit it, it's kind of really bad
It's like
because there's movies I will never ever watch again.
see, and it's not like the movie's so bad where I'm like don't want to revisit this again. It's more like the movie was pretty good, I'm sure like after I like this movie definitely made me want to watch that one from 1960, and that's pretty much like the big drop off I got from watching it. Just yeah,
And just because like you're not watching the movie, I really liked Bluebeard, like a really old movie from I think France.
oh yeah,
I really liked it when I watched it when Haley and I watched it one night, but I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again.
I have a lot of movies like that where it's
Yeah.
like, I liked them, I'll just never see them again.
Yeah.
So, is it my turn now?
Yep.
yeah, I'll pass it to
Okay.
you.
I thought this would have been a really wonderful Doctor Who episode, if that makes any sense.
Well, they not Doctor Who, but Torchwood actually had like a multi-part
Oh,
series
I
that
bet
was
they
kind of
did.
like this.
Yeah,
Called The
Children of Earth. Yeah. Oh,
I
gosh.
find the concept of this movie more interesting than the movie itself. Like, it has a lot of fun ideas to play with, but I don't think it ever like capitalizes on them as well as it could have. Going to Ron.
Okay. I think I'm probably going to be on the island by myself just because when I watched this movie, of course, I was younger. It was when it first came out. And, of course, I followed John Carpenter, so anything he brought out, I was on it. And I was a fan of the original. So when I saw this one, I loved it. Like, I've watched it probably like 1,000 times growing up. And then rewatching it for this podcast, because I even bought the collector's edition.
Yeah.
But it was like the first time I watched it in probably like 15 years or so, maybe. Like, probably even longer. And I had humor in it, like there were certain like corny things where I'm like, oh, I can't believe that actually made it in the movie, or
Yeah.
that was done poorly or something, but it still brought me back, and I had those good memories with it. And anything with like kids creeps me out. Like, it's automatically going to creep me out with kids, or or religion is another thing that always gets me too.
The themes of this movie definitely were interesting, with like what the fears kind of spur from. But,
Especially with like a small town setting of people like mistrustful of each other and turning on each other.
And I felt like
Like
I
one
felt
of the
like
best
it.
Twilight Zone
I felt
episodes.
like John Carpenter, not to talk ill on him, but like watching it recently, he kind of dropped the ball on it. I think.
How dare you?
No, I think he could like have made it a little more like scarier with the like just like them passing out and stuff. Like Like when everybody collapsed and died, or well, not fainted. Sorry, we only had 2 deaths. We had the guy on the grill, and then we
2
had
deaths that we saw.
Yeah, that was no. Even
There was
when
like
they
4 coffins of the funeral.
Oh, was there 4 coffins? Okay, I
Yeah,
only
like
counted
4 or
2.
5.
I only counted 2,
We can
so I
assume
was like
that
really
a lot of
bummed.
people driving didn't have a good time.
Yeah. So
We're breaking into the plot and we haven't even gotten to see
I know. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But also, I was gonna say we need to say who it stars and give a shout out to one
after
of
we
them.
hear from Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that as we get to the synopsis. But
Go ahead, Sid.
like it's a fine movie, but it was a little disappointing. Like, it's worth mentioning that like I watched this on a like one of those cheap 4 movies for $5, you know. And like on it has The Thing and They Live and some other movie I don't remember. So it's like I watched those 2 movies before I watched Village of the Damned, which this morning was actually my first time seeing it.
Uh-huh.
It's a decent movie, but it's not what I expect. I know John Carpenter's not perfect, and he doesn't make amazing movies, even though I talk about him like
He
he's a
does
phenomenal
make
all the time.
amazing
I know.
No, that's you misunderstand. Like, he does make amazing movies, but I know that not all of his movies are amazing.
Okay, there we go.
But I can't help but have those like that hope that I usually don't have for movies whenever I watch one of his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Really good. Like, it's a really good story. Really good. I guess the script's fine. The script's a little wonky at times, but and all the acting is serviceable, but it's just kind of disappointing for one of his movies, especially like kind of towards the middle of his career.
I think I read, or no, not read, but heard that he was actually, when he was filming this movie, he was also working on Body Bags too. So not part 2, but also.
Yeah, it was that could have something to do with it, but overall, it's a fine movie.
Yeah.
Wish it was better.
Halfway going through this movie, it started feeling more like a Stephen King movie.
It is
to
very
me.
Stephen King-esque, although the book it actually is based off a book by John Wyndham. I think you say his name Wyndham or something like that. Called the Midwich Cuckoos. Yeah.
I actually kind of wanted to read it after I noticed it, because like growing up, I didn't think, "Hey, what book is it off of?" And
Well,
then when I
'cause
saw it this time, I was like, "Oh, I
reading's
want to
for
read that."
nerds.
You know, there's a lot of characters in this movie who are around that don't do much in the movie, but probably get more action or purpose in the book.
Yeah, especially the priest character.
Yeah.
Where I felt like he should be more important to the story, but he wasn't in it a whole lot.
Thank you. Okay, he felt super out of place for me.
Yeah, and I don't quote me because I haven't seen the 1960s one in a very long time, and I wish I would have revisited before this podcast. But I want to say that the priest didn't have much of a role in the original. Because I think like the person that ends up doing that thing and that the priest does in this movie, it was just one of the town people. I don't think it was the priest, but I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong on that. So. Like I said, I might watch that after this. So
I've never seen it myself. I've been meaning to check it out again.
It makes me super excited to watch the original while we're talking about this one too, and and I just have huge respect for like directors just making movies that they care about and stuff like that. But
which is something that he does. No one really does anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But it
like you
sucks.
make one movie and then you're immediately drafted on to do the new huge budget blockbuster,
Fast Furious 11 or something like that.
And I'm kind of curious. I guess I didn't finish watching all the special features, but I don't know if this like script or this idea to remake this movie was thrown in his lap, or if it was kind of a passion of his that he wanted to remake it. So, I mean, maybe we could find even more there. Like if it was thrown at him, he could probably be like, this is just what I came up with because my plate was already full. Or
I'm guessing it would be a passion project because like another movie that came out around like the time of the original was The Thing that he remade too. And like I like while watching this, I was thinking of
John Carpenter. Historically, has had a love for older movies.
Yeah,
so it makes sense that like this would be something he'd want to do.
Yeah, I can understand why the older movies are so good. Like one of my favorite horror movies of all time is the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
It's a good ass movie.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
It
great.
Although
really is
Donald
good.
Sutherland in the remake's really great. Also.
Donald Sutherland
But
That
the,
was
other,
Yes,
amazing.
that one's really good too.
the other 3 remakes aren't that great though.
They never made any. I don't know what you're talking about. Saying.
I think there was I think they remade that movie 3 times.
Yeah. I'm thinking
But
he doesn't
anyway.
want it brought up.
Anyway, we should get into the synopsis now.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the movie
So-
begins with inane bullshit for like 10
Yes.
minutes.
You get great establishing shots of Northern California, which is where the story takes place.
With a weird humming sound
And a
that's
not so
coming
great
from a shadow.
Yeah. God.
Yeah.
That's
That
really
isn't-
weird.
Isn't composited very well.
It's funny, you say weird humming sound, and I thought you were talking about the soundtrack, and I was about to be like, no, I love the soundtrack. Because
So,
it is
yeah.
just it's a typical John Carpenter synth music, you know.
I think the first character we see is...
Marion County is where this all
Uh-huh.
takes place. So
I think the first character we see is Christopher Reeves. I don't care what his name is. He gets out of bed hearing the noise and he's like, my God, what was that noise? And then his wife's like, I didn't hear anything.
We cannot be
His
the
wife
I
was-
don't care podcast.
It's Christopher
No.
Reeves.
Yes.
You know we're all
Okay.
going to say that.
It
It's
was like-
Superman.
It was like, what was that noise? And the wife was like, I farted.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Yeah, and then
So
Christopher
he's
Reeves
basically
smells
like
it and
he
goes,
hears a
"Ugh."
weird whispering noise, which is weird. Like they never really come back to it. I feel like it has something to do with his role later on in the movie.
Yeah, because no one wants to spend the movie wondering about a lady's fart. So
But anyway, so and then you cut to more credits, more establishing shots, then you're introduced to the secondary character.
Principal
the
Lady
name of-
McGee.
Yeah, the principal lady. I forget her name of a character, and I also forget the
I
actress,
know,
so I feel really bad.
I know.
It's okay.
But you cut to her waking up in bed with her husband.
With her
you know,
husband, who's just so happy to be alive and like having a good life and having a good
life.
wife.
You know,
Yeah.
they're trying for a kid. They love each other, obviously.
They
It's
only
great,
have 2
you know.
days left till retirement.
yeah,
Exactly.
those are 3 strikes. You're gonna be dead within 5 minutes.
It sounds like Sydney just died.
Yeah. Hey Sydney.
No,
are
I
you
was
okay?
I was resting my feet on a bucket while petting a cat, and then the bucket tipped over and the cat flipped out. I think I got scratched on the arm.
Nice.
Anyway,
We're keeping this in.
Yep.
I hope you know that.
that's fine. I expected actually.
So-
But anyway,
She's the principal, and apparently they're going off to some like first day of school barbecue hoedown of the
Yeah,
entire
it's a,
town,
It's a town county.
it's a
like,
it's a
fair,
fundraiser
like,
because they're trying to raise
place.
money for a school
and
bus.
everybody's there. It's a great time.
All 40
Because there's a
of them.
school
Yeah,
bus
all
on the
40
front
of
of a big
them.
sign that
I
says
get
"Help buy me."
old Kansas town Rossville flashbacks.
And there's there's banners, there's balloons, some guys cooking on the grill, and also loving life and having a good time.
Enjoying his perfect
Hold on
face.
one
And
Okay.
so we're introduced to Mark Hamill's character, who's a priest, and he's all like, "Oh my God, lady, go get the finger paint." And she's like, the principal lady's like, "Okay, I'm gonna get the finger paint." And then she goes inside, and then she gets it, and there's creepy janitor there
Yeah.
Did
drinking.
you guys get to the point to the part where she sends her husband off to get helium?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because she kept telling him to do it, and he was like, "Okay, I'll do it." La la la.
Yeah. She'll pay for
Well,
that.
he eventually leaves to go one town over to get some helium for the balloons, and that's when she gets
As
to
you
go
do.
get finger paints. And
And so as
She-
she's getting,
Oh, and we also want to say that, like, before she arrives, yeah, like, she was trying to have the baby with, like, you could tell that they were trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
And he was
one
like,
one thing that they're sure to show you is all of our main characters were having intimate nights the night before.
Exactly. And then, of course, like, they made a comment about, like, he was smoking a cigarette, which I kind of want to bring up the cigarette smoking in this movie. So I wanted to bring up the fact that he's like, "I'll quit when you get pregnant," pretty much kind of stuff. So
that was like the one scene of character interplay that I actually kind of liked. I don't know, they felt like a believable couple in that moment where she's
Yeah.
like slowly reaching for the cigarette, and that was fine. So,
Yeah,
so
they were
he's-
laughing about it. There was no malice or anything. They were having a fun time giggling about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there was this incredible like dash of foreshadowing though, but
yeah, that's why.
Anyway.
That's why. That's literally why I wanted to
Smoking
bring
kills.
it up.
She drives off. Or
That's
he
why I
drives
wanted to
off
bring
to
that
get
up.
the
this
stuff.
is why you
She's
And
getting the
she
finger
goes in-
paint.
She's
Christopher
inside
Reeves
getting
is out of
finger paints.
town.
You're also Yeah, Christopher Reeves is doing something. I don't even know what at this point. I don't even think they really show you.
He's just out of town.
He had to go out of town for a conference.
Zod.
And this all lasts a very long time. There's a lot of shots of people driving cars.
It's like it's what we keep glancing over little things that don't really matter, you know, because it's mostly just establishing some character development that doesn't even really matter later on into the movie.
Nope.
It even says like it presents the place as like a small town, and everyone's just members of a small town, so they all just go like have small talk. Because it's a small town, and then they're like, "Oh, I've got to drive off and pick groceries up. Take care."
So the principal lady's getting the finger paint with the creepy janitor, and there's a bird in a cage, and all of a sudden there's
which
this
I do want to bring
again.
up. I do want to bring up the janitor real quick.
Uh-huh.
I gotta look up his name because this is just a dumb little thing. He's not.
Do you
really
love the
that important to
janitor
story.
too?
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking for
hated
his.
the janitor.
No,
I'm
but I'm
gonna
looking
kill
for the
kids.
actor's name. I have it right here somewhere in my notes.
Ariel.
Hold on. I'm getting
Dude.
close.
It's George.
George Flower. George Buck Flower.
Yep.
He has been in so many movies, and all of his movies he plays a drunk blank. Like whether it's a drunk hobo or a drunk janitor.
He plays it well.
He's been in like a billion movies, and it's the best. You recognize him all the time.
Christopher Reeves. His name was Alan.
Alan Christopher Reeves. So
Alan Christopher Reeves.
So there's the humming, there's Shadow, and then Principal Face McGee passes out. The janitor passes out. The bird passes out.
You forgot to mention the very foreshadowing shot of the glass pet, which is a yellow canary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So they all pass out, and at first you're like, hey, what's going on with those three? But then the shot pans out, and you see everyone at the party is passed out as well. There's just bodies strewn everywhere, and it's like, oh, this is happening to the whole town. That's fun. And then it cuts to Principal Faces McGee's boyfriend or husband driving along, and he sees a bunch of cows that are laying over in the field, and he's like, oh, that's curious. And then he looks over, and there's a truck. Oh, my God.
He swerves last minute to miss the truck.
Yeah, and of
he
course,
doesn't do a very good job.
Of course, at this point, we realize he crossed a certain sort of imaginary line that he must have
causes him to faint.
got into the
because you see him pass out, and then he slumps over and crashes and explodes.
Yep.
A big, massive, fiery explosion that comes from a 10
I'd
mile
say
an hour
he
crash.
passed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Automatically.
I hate you. That would look like a stick shift. How dare you?
You're right. I should just stick to the synopsis.
So he gets nice and crispy.
Yes.
And then we cut to a couple of police troopers painting a line over the road, and they're like, "Oh, we know this is where the line is."
Yeah.
And you see a bunch of
Other
ambulances
deputies.
and fire trucks have gathered around.
I love like they're all standing there looking, and then you look and there's like 3 passed out cops like 2
Yep.
feet away
Yep.
from the line.
So you could definitely tell they
tried.
already trial and error has already happened.
And then we're introduced to Dark Trenchcoat McGee. What's her name?
David Tennant.
Lady.
It's actually
it's
it's
like,
Kirstie Alley
Susan.
it's Susan, Dr. Susan
Okay.
Vellner or whatever, but
So-
Kirstie Alley.
The Dr. Susan is wearing sunglasses and smoking and looking like a total anime character in the middle of this
Looking like she
situation.
knows exactly what's going on.
A little side note, because this is Kirstie Alley, she is a native Kansan.
Woo.
She is from Wichita,
Woo.
so
Good.
we had to give it.
She escaped.
Even though now Sydney's part of the whole, probably where like 100% of other actors that aren't from Kansas are at in California.
To be fair, I'm not native Kansan either, Ron.
Yeah, that is true. You're right.
Presumptuous.
But I was going to also state that, did we bring up the fact that this was Christopher Reeve's last movie before he...
No.
Yep.
What happened?
What happened?
To all the younger
Oh my
listeners listening.
Like,
What happened to
To
Christopher
all the
Reeve?
younger
So-
listeners, who's Christopher Reeves?
Yeah, Christopher Reeve's is Superman. And, of course, a month after this movie was brought out in theaters...
No, I thought
he,
Henry Cavill was Superman.
Oh, my God, no. He fell off a horse and
Henry
he became a
Cavill.
paraplegic, which
Chamomile tea.
pretty much ruined his life.
Aw,
Anyway.
You guys are
you
cutting
don't
out
say
real
that.
bad.
It did.
He lived a fine life. He's
Yeah,
fine.
but I I mean, I guess his wife did stay with him, which was nice.
There's more to life than wives,
Yes.
Ron.
Is there?
Yes. So
There's Star Wars.
yes, there is. Exactly.
I think I lost it for a second.
So Christopher Reeves drives up and he's all like, well, what's all this then? And the cops are like, oh,
Hello?
they're actually very chill about it. They're not like, oh, you need to stay away or anything. Like, they don't have to explain anything to him, and I kind of like that. I like that the movie doesn't bog down in useless exposition. And so he looks on, and they're getting a cop ready with the gas mask and stuff, and they have a wire tied to him, and he like walks a few feet into past the line
I like this
before he passes out, and they wheel him back in. And does he wake up, or is he like still fainted?
He wakes up a little bit like after they pull him back. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
so like
minute,
yeah,
and
he,
then,
he
like,
walks
they do,
out.
like,
He walks out a
CPR
few
and stuff.
steps, of course, and then he passes out. And they're like, "Quick, pull her back!" And they yank on the rope. And as he comes across the line, he's starting to come back.
Hey guys,
to
just so you
conscious.
know,
And
I don't know if you
Dr.
can hear me
Susan
at all,
doesn't
but,
seem very
like,
surprised
you guys
by
are
these
cutting out
turns
like
of events.
crazy.
Almost like she's heard of something like this before.
And we must mention she is a heavy chain smoker.
Like
Like
90% of this movie.
Yeah,
Like
I
an
mean,
anime character.
like we'll even find her in the hospital smoking.
So
Yes.
they wheel him back in and start getting him to like wake up a little, and then Susan looks over and sees that the cows are waking up too, and it's like, oh shit! And then the cops start waking up, and it's like, oh, I guess it's over.
Yeah.
You know what the
Everyone's
cows
fine.
were?
Everyone's fine.
You know what the cows were when they were asleep though?
What, Liam?
Ground beef.
Oh my god.
It just hit me.
It just hit you. No.
So we go back to the town where everybody starts waking up very slowly and hugging each other, like, oh my god, what totally happened?
Not everyone.
And then some lady looks over and goes, "Ee!" And we see that an unfortunate soul happened to pass out on top of the grill,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Did
this
you
was the
mention
best
how
part.
much time had passed?
like several hours.
They wake up at
Just-
4:00 p.m. exactly.
Yeah.
He's very crispy.
So
Just
so
like
it's
how
like
my
what, like
father
a 3-hour blackout or so?
Oh, I think it was 6.
6? Okay, 6-hour blackout. Oh my god, that dude was crispy critter.
Hey guys, anyone want a barbecue, man? Extra done?
Oh
No,
my
the
gosh.
thing was, no one did the man code and helped flip him over.
Well, no, it's funny. There's a great bit of foreshadowing where, like, before while the party's starting, someone asks, "Who's cooking? Who's the chef?" And then the person says whoever the guy's name is, and he's like, "Oh, great! I can't wait to have a burnt hot dog."
Oh, they do say that,
And
don't
you
they?
know what the
So
funny
it's such
part
a-
is?
such a John
There is
Carpenter
burnt
thing.
hot dogs down there.
Yep.
I'm so glad.
So the thing I love about this scene is it's kind of, oh god, spoilers for Avengers Infinity War, which everyone in the world has seen, so it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I like this because it's kind of like what happened in the world after people got Thanos, because people were driving, people were cooking on the grill. It was
What
a
about
bad
the
time
people
for some
flying
people.
jumbo jets and airliners?
Yeah,
and shit?
yeah. I'm sure people
I-
died.
I imagine
Way more than
like,
half the
someone
population died.
accidentally vacuumed like their husband or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That's what I like.
or
to think.
where was Ant-Man at the time of this? Oh wait.
Exactly.
No.
But yeah, I just like this. I thought was
Oh, you
an
didn't watch
effect.
Ant-Man and Wasp?
I don't know. I wasn't excited to see it. Should I watch it?
Yes.
Okay.
This I thought was an effective part of the movie because it is kind of like a scary situation to have had like everybody pass out without knowing why, and to have had people like die because of this. It's just an eerie sort of thing to think of a town where everyone fell asleep at once. And that's why I call this a good Doctor Who episode, because that seems like something a Doctor Who episode would do.
I would never
No,
do
Yeah,
it.
and
Twilight
I'm
Zone
sure Doctor
episode.
Who. No, wait.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There is an episode in season 7, I want to say,
Uh-huh.
where the whole plot is they keep passing out. It's not quite the same, but the plot is they keep passing out and waking up, and they don't know which is a dream and which is real.
So it's taken 20 minutes for the movie to get to this part, but then over the next
Yes.
5 minutes, we just like shoot through an entire year because
Yeah.
the army and people, the government comes into the town, and we see that for like one scene, and then in the immediate next scene, they're leaving, and then it's like, oh, well, I guess we'll just never know what happened, will we? They literally talk about that, Superman and Susan.
Yeah, and then we get the Superman's wife comes in and gives him the big news.
That she's preggers.
Yes. There's also a scene a little bit like
I guess right
this
before that,
where,
yeah, the other
right
girl,
before
yeah,
where the
Yeah.
widow is walking, and all of a sudden she gets really nauseous. Mm-hmm. And then you get scenes here and there with Christopher Reeve talking to women, going, "I don't know why I feel so sick. I'm still a virgin."
And you're basically being clued in that a bunch of women just got pregnant on one day.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And even like there's even kind of go as far as to say like there's this one lady's like one of the family's teenage daughters, like she's still a virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
because they have a town. Superman talks to the principal lady about this. Like, he tries to, like, ease her into it because he says, I want to tell you before we tell the entire town. And then the next scene is a council hall meeting where they're immediately like, oh, they're going to be witch babies. We need to burn them. Yeah, they're going to be mutated.
And I thought that was pretty funny because, it was like, it definitely looked like a witch hunt. And the thing I will say about this part is, this is the part where they all realize, it was during the blackout where all this happened.
And the government has an active hand in what's going on because Susan gets up and says, it's like, we know this is weird and we want to study it. So we understand that you might not want to keep these babies due to this being weirdness, but if you do, you will get $3,000 a month from the government. Mm-hmm. And then some guy stands up and is like, hey, what if my wife and my daughter got pregnant?
That was the most creepiest line
and
ever.
She is like, well, then you would get $6,000. And you see him have a look on his face like
score. Score. He's like, yes, what women are for, I guess.
Oh, no.
That's terrible.
I think that's commentary in this movie. Yeah, I like it.
But
when movies used to have messages and comments.
So, of course, like he said, government does have a full hand in this. We can definitely tell.
And like I said, we speed through this next. Like, in the next scene, like, everybody has big old baby bumps and are practicing birthing.
Well, no, there's a great bit right before that happens where, like, most of them are actually thinking of getting the pregnancies terminated. Uh-huh. But then you see multiple of them have, like, these really surreal dreams where they're all really happy and looking forward to the future. Mm-hmm. So nobody ends up going for the termination
That never comes up again later, does it?
I hope I don't jump the gun on this, but was this also a part where the town was included in that this has actually happened to another town?
No, that happens much later.
Much later. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Spoilers.
So yeah, baby bumps. They have like a pregnancy training, and then we see a shot of the road at night with just a line of like 10 cars coming along, all right after the other, coming to a barn where I guess we've set up this like impromptu birthing hospital, and we see
where they all give birth at the same time.
Yep, we see Susan walking by and seeing everybody, and it's
cigarettes in hand.
Yeah, all cigarettes in hand.
It's pretty rough. One of the pregnancies starts going bad, and Susan helps with that. And when the baby is born, immediately she's like, "Oh, it's a stillborn," and then she takes it away.
And we have to also bring up that the fact that like a lot, like at first, like people were, they were they had the choice to the abort or keep the baby, and certain. I think it was one of the women whose husband was thinking maybe, or that he knew he wasn't the father because they were like not intimate together anymore or something, and she was about to abort it, but then all of a sudden
he was in the military and he was in Japan for like a year.
And then you could get the clue that like all of a sudden like they have this weird dream or something where the babies are like doing something biologically to the mothers, where they're not wanting to abort it now, even if they were thinking about doing that.
I do like how how that scene was shown with like the lady and Bill, like the guy who came back from Japan in the army, where it was like a principal lady's like got a new camera or something as a gift, and it's like, oh, hey, check it out, lady. How do you?
And they're all sad.
Hey, Bill, how do you feel that your wife's pregnant after a year from Japan? And it's like you see like this anger on his face, and like she doesn't want to look at the camera.
But you start to think about that, like, if your wife is like, I mean, I think Sid would probably raise an eyebrow if he found out that Haley,
Well, you just bring up the old excuse of it's like, well, God came to me and he said, it's like, don't you give me that shit, Mary.
And see, that was the whole thing. It was like the whole immaculate inceptions.
I actually like it that they didn't dwell on it.
I do
though.
too.
Yeah.
Because what the modern movie would do is there'd be a whole subplot of him becoming an abusive asshole, and then like everyone in the town going, "Oh, this happened." He goes, "I don't believe you. You're all covering for her." But no, just as soon as they tell him what happened, he's like, "Oh, okay, it's weird, but whatever."
I hate skeptic characters in movies, so you're right. I love that this movie is just like everyone is like pretty much immediately like, "Okay, this is a thing that's happening."
It makes sense like if it's in the right context or whatever, but I hate it when like the whole story relies on just talk. You know?
I agree with that, but I also hate it for meta reasons because as an audience member, 99% of us know if we go to a ghost movie that there's probably ghosts, and it's not just being made up. So when you have 30 minutes of the movie dedicated to asshole skeptic characters, it gets really frustrating for me.
Yeah.
But
but I'm used to skeptics.
Yeah.
So.
Back to the pregnancies. I have a stupid question about this. It really looks like as they're giving birth, it's like immediately once it's out, plop it on the mother's laps and are like, "Here you go." Like they were almost tossing them to them, and I thought that seems not
fairly realistic.
Really?
Like I think so.
No,
I don't know much about
I mean,
I was gonna say I usually see him like hold the
for,
baby for a second and then like lean in and.
I've been there for all the birth of my children's, and
they never just tossed.
Like, well, it changed over
Hot
the
potato.
years because at first it was they used to take the baby over to the heater to clean it off and everything or whatever, and then they'd give it later on give it to the mom or whatever. But now they immediately want to give it to the mother to put skin to skin. So at this time, I think what it was.
Yes, and then
was
they
like,
charge you $4,000 for it.
You
Holy
damn
shit.
right they do.
So all the babies are born except one, which Susan takes to a truck, not shadily at all.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, and I should specify that like the skin to skin contact itself is considered a procedure, and they charge you about $4,000 for that. That's what I was referring to.
So
anyway,
that's like
yeah, back
Gotcha.
to
$4,000
Jesse's
for
saying.
the
Boom.
$4,000 for everything. $4,000 for the skin on skin. That's like $8,000. Is there more?
It's a lot to have a baby.
No, there's
Mark
way more.
Hamill,
Mark Hamill.
Mark
Yes.
Hamill comes up to Susan and was like, "Hey, yo, I saw you take that baby. It looks kind of
the hell did you
suspicious."
do,
And she's like, "Oh no, I just wanted to do the autopsy, like right
And then
then
he goes,
and there."
and then he goes,
Well,
"Oh, okay."
That sounds real.
He pretty much. She was trying to make it sound like she didn't want the mother to see it. And
But you can tell that
she
Mark
was gonna
Hamill
go-
doesn't buy it at
Oh
all.
yeah, he's skeptic. Yeah,
Yep.
another skeptic.
Indeed.
Well,
And
it's funny because he's a skeptic priest.
I'm
Exactly.
It's like, "Oh Lord, show me what to do." And it's like, Joseph 1891, be skeptic.
So, is there a scene that happens next, or does it go to the baptism and then the church scene?
Yeah,
where we
that's
see
I
what
think it goes right
yeah,
to the baptism.
Yeah, and I want to bring this up.
I want to
Yeah,
make
go
fun
ahead.
of this because the
Yeah.
babies looked at the camera.
Well, not even just that.
Stupid babies.
Did you notice, like, each baby, even though they were the same age, same whatever, they were, like, you had one that looked like it was 9-month-old, and then one that was, like,
that
3.
comes a little bit later.
It's
but
hard to
yeah.
get babies.
And well, that, and also the fact that, like, they all wore bonnets because they, they didn't want to, like, dye these kids' hair.
Yeah, they didn't want to make them wear wigs or anything.
Yeah.
And
Because
so
it's
then,
worth mentioning that like all these kids have bright blue eyes and they all have platinum blonde hair.
No.
Yes,
No,
What?
Myra has brown eyes. She
that's why they all had blue eyes.
No, they have brown eyes. Her eye. Remember her eyes staring at her mom in the kitchen?
I sure
No,
don't.
no, they were
Right.
blue.
Yep, they're brown.
No, they're blue.
They're brown.
I'm gonna.
It
find
doesn't
this
matter.
and prove- Yeah, it does.
You
'cause
losers.
Now I'm
Dude.
gonna try and prove a point.
All right, here.
So anyway, as they look this
Anyway.
up, the next scene is we finding that the babies are going up very fast. Principal Face McGee goes to her baby who's playing with blocks, and he can already spell his name when he's like a few months old, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's not
it's
normal.
not even a year yet.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool baby.
And she takes it in her
old
stride,
dude.
but they all know that weird things are happening. They were expecting weirdness, so it kind of makes
Yeah.
sense to take it in their stride. But weirder things start happening in the next scene where Superman's baby slaps a bit of soup over her little baby crib thing because it was too hot, and the mom's all like, "Oh, what was the matter, honey? Was it too hot?" And then the baby gives her the death glare of doom, and her eyes start glowing red, which is the color
No,
of their eyes
no.
that actually matter. Green.
They
You're
glow
right.
green
Great.
first.
Green.
You're right.
Yeah.
Jesus. So their eyes start glowing green,
Spoilers.
and you see something take over the mom, and she's like, oh, I'm hypnotized now. And so she's standing over a pot of boiling soup,
Boiling
and she
soup.
raises her hand, and Principal Face McGee has come over to
And she
like
just
spend some
dunks
time
her hand
It's
together,
hard
in
to
there.
see. Yeah.
and they're comparing eyes.
No, that's when she's older.
Jesus. So the principal face is there at the door knocking, and then she hears screaming, and then she comes in. We find that Mom Face McGee has stuck her arm into the pot
We
of
gotta
boiling
stop
soup.
referring to people as McGee.
No. and
There's always
Characters
a
are
big-
not interesting enough.
Oh, gosh.
so I sympathize greatly with the scene because I have learned the pain of boiling soup.
Yeah.
And, it's not a good time.
And I think
I
like
used to work at a fried chicken place. I know the pain of boiling stuff. Getting
Yep,
over your
yep,
skin.
yep.
and this part that I liked is I will give kudos to this actress. Like she looked like if someone actually did that, like how her face and everything would be. Like she you could definitely tell she was in some discomfort.
So the next scene is her at the hospital with her arm all bandaged, and Superman's sitting there with the daughter, and he's all like, "Hey, how's it going, honey?"
But she's not making eye contact
Yeah.
with him.
Well, no, the mom looks at the kid for a second, then she
Yeah.
looks away like, "Oh my god, it's horrible."
Yeah.
And then in the next scene, we see the mom walk out. They're back home, and it's complete bullshit because her arm is totally fine, and I'm
Yeah.
like, bullshit. Her arm
It's
was in that
because-
pot for minutes.
Considering what happens
No,
in the
that was-
scene, I get
that
why
was
they don't
because
spring
the
for an
doctor
expensive special
flew
effect.
up,
But
span around the
I hate you.
earth.
I hate you. I
So
hate you. I hate you.
fast
I hate
that
you. I
like
hate
it
you.
went back in time.
No
I
one's
hate
gonna
you.
get that unless they see the 1978 Superman.
millennials
Okay,
wouldn't get that
listen,
joke.
young listeners.
Sydney,
so
what-
Superman was super cool because he could fly back. And, like,
What did you?
reverse time.
Why did you say it made sense, Sydney?
It makes sense from like a filming perspective.
Oh, yeah, 'cause you don't wanna mess
considering
with-
what happened.
well,
Well, considering
do-
what happens in that scene,
they do
why
have
would they
a-
spring
her
for
s-
an expensive effect.
They have her sleeve like really up, so I could tell that they were trying to cover it. But you see her fingers, and they're totally fine. So it's just me being a nitpicky asshole,
Yeah.
where it's like she
Yeah.
wouldn't have skin anymore.
And a lot of like 90s movies did this, like, because there's like times where you'll be like, oh, you know, one moment you saw a cut on their head and the next moment it's gone. It's
So-
like I don't think they were thinking like keeping it like that.
And for all we know, this happens months later, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That is true.
So
That is true.
The timeline is really wonky at this point. in the movie.
Superman looks out the window at his wife and like looks at her and sees her standing by the cliff and is all like, "Oh, that's our happy cliff place. I'm sure she'll be fine."
Yeah.
And then you cut to her and you can see the torment of her face of like, "I've had a Satan baby.
Yeah.
Do
And
not
And she
want."
peers over the edge.
And I really like the way they shoot this because she just kind
Yeah.
of steps off frame, and I really like that. That's a good, like, nice subtle way to have
You
this
don't
happen.
you don't get a shitty Canon Films cut to a dummy falling off a
Nope.
building.
Thank
That would have
God.
been awful. And then,
I would have thought Monty Python's Flying Circus.
and then
That's why.
Superman comes. I know what scene you're talking about. Oh shit!
I don't.
And then Superman comes back to the window, and he sees that she isn't there anymore. So he immediately surmises what happens and runs out screaming her name. And I really like the scene.
Alan.
Until the camera pans up
Yeah, it's
to
the
like
worst.
evil kid's face going "Mwahaha."
Like silhouetted against the sky.
And I'm just like, this was shot really well, and Christopher Reeves was acting really good. Like, you felt the pain in his voice because he knew what happened, but he's still running out there because
He's like,
what else are you
Oh
gonna
my
do?
God. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
it was good. And so then we cut to several years later, I assume.
Dun dun dun. Not several.
Well, they're like
It's-
8.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that. Several
8 is
years.
several.
That's more than several.
yeah.
No, because I would say like they look like probably about 2 to 3.
They are
in the
not
high
2 to
chair.
3.
No, in that high chair scene
This
when
is
she
after the
boiled.
high chair
No,
scene.
I know.
She does,
So
but
about like
because they
5
use
years
said the
later.
next scene, Ron.
She was a tall baby. But
Yeah,
anyway,
she was a tall baby.
No, exactly. Like she was supposed to
1960s
be a few-month-old child, but they cast like an older kid who could actually do the stuff they wanted to do.
Maybe.
Yep.
Wanted her to do.
Didn't they say like the kids were growing like faster than normal?
No, they're just
children?
they're just smarter than they
They're
should be.
just
They
smarter
never
than they
say that
should
they're
be.
growing faster than they should.
Okay, is that in 1960?
Fuck if I
I
know.
don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not for sure. I
Maybe.
don't remember that part.
Okay, because I don't know. I remember like hearing something about it when I was watching videos
Or ma-
over this
Okay.
movie too.
They could have been aging quickly.
I don't know.
Oh, all right. Next.
So the
Cross
next
that
scene
bridge when we
is
get-
Susan talking to a bunch of shady men in a black room about how it's like, hey, we need to get more funding.
You guys
for
are
this.
breaking in and out like crazy again.
Oh, wait a minute. Can you hear us
Sorry.
now?
Are you opening up anything?
No, I'm not.
Are we better now?
Yeah, you're better now.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
So, yeah,
it's when everyone talks really fast all at once.
Oh. So Susan mentions that Superman's daughter seems to be the leader, and then we cut to them walking through the school, a bunch of weirdos with pale blonde hair and blue eyes and all wearing gray and white, walking in like perfect unison together.
Are you talking about
All
Germany
except
in
one.
1944?
I sure am.
All
All
except
except
one.
one. Because they're in pairs, because each one was like a boy and a girl, a boy and a girl, and then there's
There's
just one
5
boy
boys and
trailing
5
behind.
girls, but one of the girls was miscarried.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
And the standalone, which is I think
That-
he's really sweet, is
Uh-huh.
David.
Yep.
And it's what character will get to like.
So they're clearly Satan children, and any
Minus David.
any sensible person would have killed them a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could definitely tell like there was something off. Like
No.
no, I was gonna say like a lot of them believed that they were kids born without souls or something like that.
Well, Mark
This is
Hamill
the-
says that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like the work of the devil. You
It's
know, that's
actually
what
a
they're.
little more interesting because he's not saying he doesn't like say that.
Yeah,
they're born
he's saying
without
that they all
souls.
have
He's like
one
they all
soul.
share one soul.
Which is kind of
No,
cool
kind of
I guess
interesting.
that. Oh yeah, that was.
because they all kind of have a hive
'Cause they're-
mind. They like
yeah,
talk
like,
together. And
That's
it's
why they all
great.
pair up. Is like when they're in
Wait,
pairs, it makes them stronger.
Which we'll see how strong they are when the next scene's the eye doctor
Yep, they go in and Susan greets them and
smoking a cigarette.
Is this where they immediately like play their hand at like we're trying to understand what you're thinking, but
Yeah,
you're really
yeah.
good at guarding your thoughts?
Yes,
And she's like,
that's
"Yep,
it. Yeah.
suck it."
She's like, so
"Yep,
what do
been
you
doing
think?
this for a
Yeah,
while."
yeah.
So yeah, they can read minds. That's a thing. So
Yeah.
they're then
Perfect normal.
They're going through
I mean-
checkups, and one of them is at the eye doctor, and the eye doctor puts some like eye drops in her eye, and it's totally fine. And then she sets it down, and then she picks up. What does she pick up?
She picked.
Hydrochloric acid.
No, well, let's just go ahead and say that. Like,
I
it was.
actually think it's a really strong disinfectant that's used for like.
I'm
other
gonna disinfect
purposes.
your eyes right off of your head.
Well,
Not
it's
for
like
your eyes
she-
per se.
No, I know.
Oh, I thought it was probably something to do with what is it? Because like
Clean
the
the
drops that do sting that doctors give you that have minor stings or whatever is the dilation, and I think that's why it was like kind of like going in and out, going.
Do you
crazy.
think it was that? Because this seemed to be incredibly painful, not just like a sting.
Yeah, but kids
Maybe it was used for
overdramatic.
cleaning, like some kind of cleaning solution. Well,
Oh,
no,
these
but
aren't
when it
normal
happens
kids.
to considering what happens though, like
It could have
it
been
doesn't
saline
seem
for
minor
all we know.
considering what happens to the lady.
Oh god.
Exactly. But so what happens is she squirts some of this in the kid's eye, and the kid is all like, "Ow, oh, the agony, the pain," and then
And they all like turn their heads in the waiting room
all
right at the
other
door.
kids. So you know that they can like feel each other's
Yeah, they are-
whatever
they
they
do
feel, and
carry
they can
one
hear
soul.
each other's thoughts. And so the doctor lady tries to fix it, but then one of them like kicks the door open and just stares her down.
They all do.
No, it's just one that's in the door.
Is that Myra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
she's
she
the
gi-
leader.
she
We
gives
might
her-
as well say it.
She gives her the red stare of death and like mind controls her, and then she picks up the eye drops and starts pouring it into both of her eyes and,
And
screaming.
she's
So that's a
screaming.
good time.
So
It looked pretty weird.
I
when
will,
first saw this scene.
and Myra is the leader. Like mainly, you'll just need to know Myra, the leader, and David,
Because
the good one.
literally none of them else have names or matter.
Exactly. So, and Myra is Superman's kid.
So speaking of, Superman like goes there after this
Speaking of
happens.
Superman,
Yeah, he shows up. All of them are standing outside waiting to get picked up by their parents. And Mark Hamill goes over to Susan and I was like, "Hey, yo, some shady shit's going on. I know that the kids did this." And she's like, "Oh, we don't know that. It could have been an accident." And at this point, I was just thinking, "Come on, Mark, bust out your lightsaber. I mean, you've almost killed kids for less."
Just see.
Oh,
He has.
Thank you, Disney.
Yep.
It's exactly what I wanted.
So that happens, and then Superman gets there and is all like, "Come along, child," and she's all like, "Fuck you, Dad," but she comes along.
Yeah.
He holds his hand out for her, but she doesn't take it because the
Yeah.
kids are all emotionless bastards, except
Yeah.
for David.
Yep.
David
That doesn't
and-
even come up till a little bit later.
and one of the things is they use like these big vocabulary words, not built for their
See,
youth.
that right there is why this movie didn't scare me at all, because it's like the kids weren't scary. I just wanted to punch them. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
shut up, you little
Well, that's the
twerps.
thing. I look at them and I'm like, yeah, sure, they got mind control powers, but they tell you right away you can beat the mind control powers. Besides that, kids are very weak.
well,
Just pick them up and set them somewhere else.
At any time.
but I think like this movie is kind of feeding off the fact that like you don't like parents
I was
hold
gonna say,
fear
it's
over
for the parents'
kids.
fear, not the kids.
Yeah, it was like the
Yes.
parents hold the fear over the kids, and then of course now the roles have switched, and now you're like walking on eggshells around.
It's kind of like Rosemary's
them.
Baby, where the fear comes from the violation of having this happen to you. It's kind of like
Plus,
a rape
it
allegory
kind
in
of
that sort of
reminded
way.
me of like a really common condition a lot of new parents have, where they're just incapable of developing an emotional connection with their baby. Like it's just kind of like the roles reversed. Like it's extremely common, and like that's why there's like a it seems like a weird proportionate of like news stories of parents that let their child starve to death or whatever.
Well,
Most
you bring
people
up a good.
do. Sorry.
I was gonna say you bring up a good point, because it is reversed, because it's from most of the parents we see that they do care. It's not like they're like, oh, I gave birth to this weird test tube baby. No, they all like have emotions and empathy for the kids, and the kids are just
Yeah.
like, fuck you,
especially David.
especially Dave. So
Good egg.
they all go home, and I forget what happens next.
I don't remember either.
Well, I mean,
Oh crap!
there are scenes here and there of like Myra talking to her father, almost as if the roles are switched.
Where
like,
it's like, you will do as I command, father.
you
Yeah.
would, and like the father's like, whatever.
I think the next thing that important happens is Superman trying to teach them. I know
Well,
things happen
oh,
before
yeah,
that,
oh,
but that's the
yes,
next
no.
important thing.
Yeah.
There was an important scene that happened when they're walking by a graveyard.
And David walks
splits
off.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and
Just
the
looking
lead
around,
girl
looking
looks
from
at him
grave
like,
to
hey,
grave. Yeah, and he's,
What are you
he's
doing?
walking around looking from grave to grave when he stumbles upon the teen mother, who I think is the one who had the miscarriage.
she
Yep.
is.
And she's getting hammered, standing by a grave, and David doesn't really understand why. And he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't get it, kid." And she stumbles off, all half drunken,
And she
that's
dies.
when, that's when you see Superman again, and like the kid goes up to Superman and he's like, "Where'd they bury
Well,
the
I think-
baby? Where'd they?"
I think what happens before that is he gives her the flash of her putting the gun in her mouth.
Yep.
And then later, it's the church scene with the casket, and Mark Hamill is talking about that one soul thing, basically accusing all the
Yeah.
parents, like, you let this happen, and we must put a stop to it.
Yeah.
And then it's Christopher Reeves in the cemetery.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
And see, and
That's
go
where
ahead.
that's where we
Sorry, I
have
was
the
just-
discussion with David, where you find out he's different,
Yeah.
and that's where this is also where you learn that they operate in pairs.
Because he
And he's
doesn't
like,
have his pair.
I lost my pair.
Yeah,
and
well, he
that's
was-
why he's the only one who's able to understand sympathy, which is the
Which I
first
find that-
emotion he learns.
I find that very interesting for how this species, spoilers, works, that they, like, operate as, like, a dual pair of
Yeah, they're not a
beings.
hive mind; they're two beings together, and like they
Right.
do have telepathic powers, but they're not an individual; they're like a duo. Just cool.
1 second, we're having a bit of weirdness on our computer.
Bit of wonkiness. I am on my end actually.
Okay.
Right. Okay, but what I was going to say also is with David, since he wasn't paired up and stuff, he's the smaller of the group. He's the runt.
He's tiny.
Yeah, he's tiny. And then of course, I think the reason why we find David showing empathy and stuff is he's trying to find his place.
He asks his
He has
mom
to find
about
his
it,
place
Because
Yeah.
he asks his mom, is like, oh, so if I felt
Yeah.
pain, you would feel bad for me. And she's like, yep.
Yeah, and
That's how that works.
And I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to find his place because his place is missing. Like he's only half of
He's the black sheep.
Yes.
And so I think the next scene is where Superman is teaching them, because earlier the principal said, it's like, you got to teach them empathy and humanity. And he's like, oh, all right.
Well, that and Susan was also saying they listened to him. Like they for some reason, Alan Superman is he can respond to them without like them attacking him.
I don't think that we find that out yet.
Well, no, because that was the whole thing. Was like there's a reason why Myra is it Myra destroys mom is because she finds like she needs him, like she like as somewhat of a teacher or as a
But
guide.
I don't think he figures out the whole barrier thing until like the climax.
barrier?
But
What are you talking
that's a bit
about?
closer to the climax.
The-
like,
No,
after-
that's not what I was.
letting-
That's not
what
what I
are
was
you
talking
talking
about. No, I was talking about the fact that like
Because they
Like,
don't listen to him.
No, like the children have more respect
towards him.
I don't
like,
think they
any
ever
of
say
the-
that.
Yeah,
No,
Susan
like
says that.
Yeah,
Susan
no.
says.
Sydney, do you remember this?
Remember when Susan was walking by the trees and stuff, or by the cars and stuff, and he was like, he goes, well, we're gonna set them off into a barn or whatever, uptown that's for the classroom or whatever.
That happens way later.
No, I know, but that's she was saying. Like they want him to be the teacher. Like they looked up.
The principal lady says that she wants him to be the principal because she thinks he can teach them empathy.
Yeah.
She doesn't say anything about them listening to him.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just thinking like more of like they looked up to him, not.
I don't think they look up to him.
They
though.
don't. They
The
don't. I don't think
principals-
they look up to him.
Or-
I think the only thing of significance he is to them is Myra's father.
Yeah.
Even though he's technically not the father. Even though
It's
he's not
like
the
she's the leader and he's her parent, so that's the only thing that gives him any notoriety. to
Okay,
that
well,
man.
because
The
because I'm
closest
trying to
thing
find.
throwaway line was just the principal saying, "Come on, Doc, you're like the closest thing to respect
to
we
a psychologist we have.
have." Yeah,
So I
don't
think
know.
that's what it was.
I guess like the way I looked at it was the fact that like there was a reason why he survived and Myra got rid of mom. Why everybody else has both parents still.
See, you could say that,
Yeah.
but I don't think the movie ever does. But I think it's also because
guess
he's the
that's
most
probably
useful.
yeah.
He's like important in the community, a doctor. He's well respected,
Yeah.
so that's the only reason I think. And that's never something that's discussed. It's
but
just there.
and of course when we find out exactly what they are, I feel like that's why
Take us to your leader.
Yeah, of course. So I think that's why they end up gravitating towards him because he's an alien from Krypton.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm just joking.
That makes sense. So
All right, let's keep going.
now they have the classroom, and what does he try to teach them at first? And they're all like, "Fuck you."
He's trying to teach him biology. He
Uh-huh.
mentions eyes, and then one of the kids just kind of struggling with it.
Uh-huh.
He's like,
It's like they're the
"Eyes
windows to the
are-"
soul.
Yeah.
So that's
And,
fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And then he's like, "Well, what about philosophy?" And then they're about to say something when
And then he
they
gets
get a
called
call from
away.
the principal.
Very poorly timed. He
Mm-hmm.
leaves, and then janitor comes in all drunk and angry. He's all like, "I know what you little bastards are.
What a hero!
Come on,
And
fight me.
And
Put up your
as-
nukes."
come on, fight!
As a one-time drunk, angry janitor, I can tell he really sold the role.
Have you wanted to beat kids in the face with the broom before?
No, luckily I was outside the whole time, so
Oh,
I was just
okay.
the creepy guy that got.
But yeah, he's
That people always talk
gesticulating with the broom and eventually knocks one on the side of the head. And basically, we're getting the sense that anytime any one of the kids are hurt or threatened, their danger mode goes into activate, and they all stand up and creepily walk towards him, and they do the eye thing, and he's like,
the
"Oh
music
no!"
kicks in.
And
yeah.
then they hypnotize him to walk up a ladder backwards, which I find incredibly impressive.
I like
I would
this
not
scene
be
a
able to do that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But then they have him kill himself in the weirdest way, where he stands at the top of the roof, points the hard angle of the broom at his chest, and falls forward onto a truck and gets impaled by the broom.
Which I don't
Here,
know
you
that
if
was
need
it's-
to-
rad.
or if I
You
feel
need to
or if
clean
it's
it
kind of
up.
forced.
Here's the mop.
Oh,
But every single
Oh.
time one of the every single time the kids kill a person, it's always in some ironic way that they hurt
Yep.
or endangered the
it's like
other
you hit us
person.
with the broom,
Which
but
I don't know
we'll
if I
impale
like
you.
that,
That's what-
or if it's forced and
That-
weird.
And that's what I got was okay, you harmed me with that broomstick, I'm going to harm you with that broomstick. You harm me with that gun, I'm going to harm you with
It's
that
a-
gun.
It's
know,
a real eye. It's literally eye for an eye.
yeah.
And so then Superman and the principal run up, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And they see the kids just walking away, and they're like, "Yeah, they're definitely killing people."
Oh, there was an eye for an eye scene in this, literally.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a little
That
bit
was
early.
great. Yeah.
So,
Well, there-
I think what happens next is the kids find the barn and they're like, "We want this to be our school place, and
Well,
you will
it's
make it
not
so."
just a barn; it's the barn they were birthed in.
Yeah.
And they were like, "You will make the necessary arrangements, father." Like, she's all packing and being an asshole, and he's like, "Fuck you, kid," and she's like, "No, fuck you." And so it's great. There's a conga line of the parents dropping the kids off at the barn because they have no choice. But David is like a little. He's dragging his feet a little.
Yeah.
He's not as quick as the rest of them, and he talks to his mom a little, and she's like, "You don't have to go with him. You don't have to do what they say." And he's like, "Oh, yes, I do."
Yeah.
And so they're at the barn doing stuff. What happens next? Is it the
they
truck?
summon Satan.
Well,
Truck.
I think this is the time because we get like finally they're at the barn and Christopher Reeves is there to sort of teaching him, and he's talking to him about empathy. He's like, "Why don't you feel?" He's like, "Why do I?
Why
need
don't
to
you feel?
And then of course Myra's like, "Why do we need to feel?" Like pretty much saying like the race of man.
I think the truck happens before.
Is
this.
that? Oh God, we
You guys
need
are
With
breaking
Bill?
up a bit
Yeah.
more.
Oh.
Huh?
With Bill?
Yeah.
No,
The science
that
guy.
happens habit later. I hate you.
Don't you give me that look, you piece of shit.
All right.
Swords.
Well, sorry, listeners. This is why notes need to be taken place.
The only reason I say that is because I think that's when he's closer to the breaking point, and after he's been told about, oh, maybe that happens next, where he goes to Susan and she tells him, it's like, oh, this happened to a village in this place and a village in that place.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's when they were starting.
And that's
to
where he
talk
also
about it.
gets the idea of putting up the wall. You know, think about something to put stuff like behind your mind. You know?
And is this where she shows him what she had?
They learned about other colonies. Like,
And then she's all like, come into my secret laboratory, and she takes him down into the basement, and it's like, oh my
yeah.
god, what have you done? And she's like, I kept it all these years. And then it's an alien baby.
yeah. Which you could see that she did perform an autopsy on it.
Yeah, it's got the Y
T.
incision.
Cut.
T-cut, yeah.
Y incision, that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's
no,
the Y.
Jesse
it is a Y.
had the
You're
right
right.
word.
Yes.
I did.
It's a stupid
You're
one.
right. It looked like a T, but yes, it was a Y.
It
You're
is.
It's
right.
an
Called
alien.
Y
You have
incision.
to alter procedure.
Yes.
And so then the truck thing happens because one of the parents is all like, "Oh, I'm going to pick up my Susan, something."
Yeah. Like,
S.
I think it's Sally.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure.
And so he like drives by two kids and he's like, "Hey, where are they?" And the two kids are like, "Fuck you." And so he keeps driving, and then he sees four of them, and then he sees one step out into the road in front of him, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And he slams on the brakes, and then he gets out and is all like, "Oh my god, are you okay?"
Oh, yeah.
And then she's all
good
like,
memory.
"Fuck you," and he's all like, "Fuck you, I'm gonna go get my Sally."
Yeah.
And then they all do the red eye thing, and he gets in his truck and drives straight down the
This is
road,
so
and
funny.
somehow gets a
Straight.
sick jump through the air into a gas tank.
This part cracks me up because it's like he's aiming straight at this gas tank, and then the next scene that we get, he's falling from the sky into the gas tank.
It was like you glitched in
Yeah.
GTA 4.
Yeah. Sweet air time.
And then I think we get to the scene because
I feel like
the death of the truck man makes him go and be like, "Why don't you have empathy? What do you want?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't. Why do we want to survive? That's all that matters to
What
us."
was the thing with Mark Hamill later too after this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's yelling at him. He's trying to get in their heads, saying like, "Phil, damn it, Phil," you know.
We are
and
stronger than
we're
you
strong-
because we have compassion, and they're
Yeah.
all like, "Fuck
You guys
compassion."
keep it up. I'll be right back.
Yeah, and then of course, like at this point in the thing where he's trying to get him to feel compassion and stuff, and Myra's just kind of rebuttaling him to say like, what is that going to get us? Like, how is
Nothing.
that going to increase like our way of life? And pretty much stating that the human race is
Weak.
flawed and that they don't have any reason to keep them.
And so then I think we have the Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like this scene.
You don't like this? Why don't you like
well,
this?
like,
Liam?
the promo I was having with, like the priest and like all throughout this movie, he was fine up until like he was starting to be more suspicious about the kids, and then straight jump into like these kids need to be dealt with as quick as possible. Then all of a sudden you see like the rifle scope, like, and this is the priest. This is supposed to be like a passive.
I kind of like that.
But here's the thing. Like, this is. I'm not saying this is forgiven.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back.
We're just talking
it's not
about
that.
the priest.
The priest,
scene.
he has
yes.
he has a scope, and Liam had a problem with it because he felt like as a priest he should probably have a higher moral ground.
Like no, I
Oh.
wanted to see like more of like him like starting to go down that moral ground.
Yeah,
like,
no, I don't
like,
mind the idea.
He was the first one to grab the gun. Like the priest was the first one to grab the gun to try and.
Well,
kill
that's
the
fine.
children.
Like I actually like that idea of like the priest being the first one to lose his mind and to reach for a gun and everything. I just
Okay.
wish we got more of the deterioration.
Because
But-
you know what
yeah,
we needed?
yeah. I wanted to see that.
Here's what we needed. Because his wife is one of the ones that had a kid, so we should have seen a
Yes.
scene with him and his child, and
Well-
him being like, "You're an unnatural abomination."
Well, you do get kind of an answer to that later on about why maybe he would be the one to break.
Mm-hmm.
But
I feel
but
like
it doesn't really come up before that, you know.
I feel like he got to this point because he feels it was like he feels as a priest that he needs to end this abomination.
Well, it's
in a
clear
way.
that these 10 are Satan
yeah,
babies.
exactly. So I think he's doing his sort of like
And people are dying in town.
priest duty to get rid of these demon children.
I do think that's an important factor. It's like it's an open secret in this town that all the deaths and the accidents are caused by these kids. So he is like, well, somebody's got to deal with
and
this.
it is an abomination because all these pregnancies happen like pretty much immaculate.
It's an
conception.
abomination unto the Lord.
And it was all due because of when the pass out when everybody fainted. So yeah, it's definitely he's thinking because he's not thinking extraterrestrial.
Which is
He's
like I know
thinking
Jesse had a
demon.
problem with them being aliens, but I think that fits better in with the priest's narrative.
I think
Like,
I would have been
them-
happier not knowing what they were.
not knowing what they were would have been better. But I think them being aliens is better than them being like demons or ghosts or something. you know?
Well,
I wouldn't have liked it if they were ghosts.
I got a soft spot for aliens. in
Yeah, me
movies,
too.
So like, I kind of like it that it's aliens in this.
that
movie.
not also I think it brings the story more depth to know that this is actually just one town of many where they're trying to colonize.
It is an
know?
interesting angle to the whole alien invasion thing where it's like it's been done before of like the aliens
But
are
it-
going to conquer us from the inside, but this is a different way of doing it.
Where it's it's a different. Not only is it a different way, but we're told that they've tried it and failed several times already.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a sort of a sound plan because in theory it's like, oh well, even if they do find out, they won't do anything to us because we're their children. So it's
Well,
like
that-
they have that
But
built-in
at the same
security
time,
barrier.
like they think they understand it, but they're thinking from a like whatever alien supplant them in. They're thinking from a purely biological standpoint. You know.
Yep.
They're not taking into account the quote unquote human element
Right.
to the story, and that's why it doesn't succeed, and that's why according to that speech, he says humans are superior.
We are. Booyah.
No,
So-
but okay. Go
Mark
ahead.
Hamill shoots himself because the kids are all like, "Oh no, you're not going to shoot our leader," and they give him the red eye.
Yeah,
I don't like the red eye effects.
I did.
Oh really?
I do
do.
actually. I think
I was like,
I think
I
it
like-
looks
I
all
liked
right,
it because-
especially like the climax of the film. I think it looks really good.
I actually really liked that part, but in other scenes like with the truck, that's when it like
I feel well. See,
was
here's my thought process. I think it's great because it shows the intensity of their powers. Like, because it starts off like the green, and then as it gets stronger, it goes red, and then when it really gets strong, I mean, it's like
you
the
get to
full
see, the
skull.
And I like the skull part.
Yeah, and I will say, like, because in the original, the 1960s one, the eyes just glowed. There was no intensity.
And I like that.
So, and I think, like, John Carpenter wanted to let them know that they do have some sort of
Power
rage
levels.
build. Yeah, power levels.
By the way, when Mark Hamill was scoping in on them, what did you say her name was?
Myra.
Was talking to David about how it's like you're the runt of the litter, you don't have your
Yep.
pairing. So we do think lesser of you and we don't care about you as much, but we are still going to
Yeah.
like work with you because you're one of us at the end
Yeah,
of the day. So
exactly.
you see
Yeah.
kind of the code of these aliens that it's like, well, you suck, but you're still one
And
of us.
and I think also,
But
and I'm
you
glad that
suck
you brought this
less.
up because I think at that part, that's when David starts to realize even more, like, where's my place?
I'm not with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, where is my place? Is it with my mom? Is it not with this group? Like,
So I think after Mark Hamill shoots himself, we pretty much cut to the next day where Superman and Susan meet, and they're all panicking, and Susan's like, "Oh, so the CIA and the government are going to blow the shit out of this place. We've already destroyed the other towns."
Scorched Earth campaign.
And this is literally what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guarantee, like, if this happened in, like, Topeka, we would be blown off the map.
To quote Ripley, I say we take off and nuke it from orbit. That's my solution to every alien invasion.
There you are.
And I think the kids are aware of this because one of them eventually has a line where they kind of hint that they were also talking to the other groups and the other, like they had that ability to talk over vast distances. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Susan's basically like, "Save yourself, you got to get out now." Mm-hmm. And they go off to pack papers, and he goes off to do his thing. And she gets into the building of hers, the little clinic, and the kids show up, and she's like, "Ah, shit!" And they, like, with all of them using their powers on her, they finally break through her barrier, and she takes them down into the basement to see their lost kindred. Mm-hmm. And seeing the Y
incision, your first clear look at it.
Yeah. Seeing the Y incision, they clearly get very angry at this, so they like set her down on the table and have her.
This is. I will say this.
I hate you.
This is my favorite part,
where she gives herself an autopsy.
But why though?
I think it's because
just making puns, Ron.
Oh my god, you're such
so I like it, and I kind of like that you never see the aftermath.
Yes, that's me too, and I like the fact like you see
it just looks like a little poke.
You see the teardrop coming from her eye, and that's like this. I mean, if this was really happening, this is probably what she would really look like too. Like you can definitely see that she has anguish, she's like pain, and also like she has no control. Like,
does Christopher Reeves talk to her about his barrier, or does he talks to the principal?
Yeah.
So he goes back to the barn, and like they're basically like, "Oh, you need to make arrangements for us because we know that we're about to get murderated, so we need to get out of here as fast as possible. Like, we leave tonight." And he's like, "Okay." And that's when he realizes that like he was thinking things. He was like, "Oh, y'all suck."
Are you talking about like when he starts seeing the ocean?
Yeah, he sees the ocean, and then he's all like,
he realizes he can block his thoughts.
Know what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
he
pretty
finds
rad.
a way. Yeah.
So he goes off. Everyone's getting crazy in the town. We see a horde of angry villagers with pitchforks and torches.
It's literally it's like Shrek before
Shrek. Well, they're being led by the pastor's wife.
And she's all fire and brimstone.
Which like just how insane she's being. Of how insane she's being. I think that's like your clue to why Mark Hamill would be the first one to break and try to kill the kids, because he didn't break, like he didn't lose his mind. It was his wife that went insane, and he's like, I have to deal with the problem to save my wife.
Oh, that's really good. I like that.
That's a good
but again,
one.
they don't play with it more,
So
unfortunate.
So this is happening.
I say that, but at the same time, if this movie was made today, like there would straight up be a scene where the priest is saying, "I have to kill the kid to save my wife," and like they'd be spelling it out for you.
This would be a Netflix
which I also
series.
hate.
And like each episode would probably cover like each parent, and I would not watch the Netflix adaptation.
So
that's all I'm saying. I'd watch this one at 1960, but not Netflix one.
This angry mob scene is happening concurrently with the kids taking out Susan and like finding the other one, because that's happening, and they're marching down the street towards like 4 or 5 of the kids who all stare at him, and then the principal lady shows up. It's like, no, there has to be another way, we have to stop this. But then their eyes all start glowing, and then Mark Hamill's wife sets herself on fire. And I was talking about this before with Ron, how it's a good effect at first when it shows her burning body, because it shows the fire like going up her clothes and stuff.
And it was very flammable dress.
But then there's a next shot where it does that thing where the fire is obviously like 10 feet in front of the actor, and they're just screaming.
Yeah,
and it's like
standing there.
Like you just see you see like the reflection of the flames.
We do see the aftermath though, and she's nice and crispy.
She is very nice.
She's gooey.
And I think that
crispy. She's freaking gooey.
And that right there is kind of like the true John Carpenter. You can definitely tell, like, this is where like the guy on the grill, the wife being burnt to a crisp. Like, he loves those kind of like.
I will say, if you hadn't told me this was a Carpenter movie, I would have guessed that, because it does feel like it at points. I would say it's not.
I would have guessed it simply by the soundtrack, which of course he did with Dave Davies. I think is the guy's name. Is the guy who he collaborates a lot with the soundtracks.
I would say a lot of this is kind of offbeat for his usual stuff. Like if you compare Alien and Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness, those all look very similar, whereas this one doesn't quite have that exact same look. But every now and again,
he didn't make Alien though.
Wait,
was
You
Ridley
said
Scott.
Alien.
what did I say?
You said Alien.
That was the first one you listed.
That's
In
what.
the
Yeah.
Mouth of Madness, Halloween, and Prince of Darkness. There we go.
There we
The
go.
Thing. Yeah.
Poor Ridley Scott didn't get any credit for that.
Sorry.
And that's
what
your
you
number
get
10?
after
That would be
Alien
a good-
comes.
Is that your
That's what
number
you
10?
That is my number 10. Fuck you. Die in a fire.
Damn.
A torch fire. So what happens next is all the kids
Yeah.
are like back at the barn,
Yep.
and then the cops show up and they're like, "We totally got this," and they don't totally got this.
I like this part because it was like, yeah, you see two cops show up and they're like, yeah, we're going to take out these kids kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, more cops show up and then it's
Well,
a
one of them
full-out-
just turns over and shoots
yeah.
the other
Oh,
one
yeah,
with a
that's
shotgun.
it. And then like a van shows up. Like pretty much like a whole army of the villagers, I would say.
No, these are army men and police.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like actual people too.
I just love the scene because this dude was better than the Master Chief. He just like steps out into the road, cocks a shotgun, and takes out like 4 police cars
Yeah.
with 4
Like-
shots. He doesn't
God.
miss.
It's not just
Don't
that,
care.
but like with one shotgun blast, one of the police cars literally explodes.
And another one
like-
overturns.
And also, I think this is also showing the audience that as the kids mature,
They get more
They
powerful.
get more powerful because they weren't even there really. They were like inside the building.
No, they were outside.
Were they outside?
They all step outside.
Oh, okay. I thought they were still
And hold
inside the
hands
building.
and do the Care Bear stare.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my god. So
Essentially what it was.
So it's just a massive clusterfuck. Everybody shooting everybody else. A helicopter crashes and explodes. A bus drives by and they shoot up the bus. There's like 40 dead people
that's
in
funny.
the road.
Well, I love it because obviously, because John Carpenter, he likes pushing his movies to like the farthest the budget will go. Would much to the chagrin of the studios he was working for at the time. So I love it. You see all this amazing destruction with cars and everything, and then I bet he was like, "No, then the helicopter crashes," and then you can tell there's just some guy in a suit standing next to him. He's like, "No, the helicopter's not going to crash because it
No,
crashes
John.
off screen. It's the best."
Yeah, I was
No,
about
John,
to say
no.
it was like you don't have the budget for this, John. I bet you don't.
Oh, dude, he totally does though.
Oh.
So
Like if you see it, like I mean, like, oh, I'll get to that point.
Christopher Reeves somehow finds a box of dynamite in an old like
This
factory.
this is why I said like dynamite sticks and a time clock.
Like,
Yeah, well-
sir, what were you planning on doing with that before
Well,
this?
he confiscated it from Lex Luthor after saving Big
Oh.
Lois Lane.
Oh my god.
That makes sense.
Well, actually, I don't remember for sure, but I'm trying to think if they specified that this used to be a mining town or there's like a mine going on.
I
or
think
a
they
rock
do.
quarry or
I
something.
think somebody says something like that.
Makes sense.
I'll
But
accept it.
Maybe-
How do you
maybe
think
it was-
everyone
yeah,
got
maybe it was
pregnant
one of
'cause
those,
they were
like-
all mining.
Oh my gosh.
I could be mistaken.
No, but
we got nothing else better.
I was gonna
so-
say
Yeah.
they may have dropped something like that, like, oh yeah, by the way, just so
And
you
I mean,
don't
I
get
know
this.
you guys kind of. I know you guys kind of lived like in and around Topeka for the longest time, but every small town has the dynamite stash.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We all need to know where it is in case of
It's
emergencies.
at Liam's house.
Yeah,
So
right
he's
next to my younger brother playing Red Dead 2.
he goes off and finds the principal, who is all like, "Oh, I gotta save David," and he's like, "I could do it. I'm able to block my thoughts. I just thought of I thought of my happy place with my wife where we went and dreamt and like it's all sappy,
Yeah.
but it's really heartfelt and I
It's
don't know. I
it's
felt
it's
sad.
the view. Like it actually is the view from the cliffs. He says it's the view we could see from our house.
And he says,
It-
as long
it
as
was-
I think
it
of
was-
that, I can do this.
It
I
was
can trick
definitely
him.
it was definitely the last view of his wife.
Yep.
Like Saul.
Oh no. So he's like, I got this. Don't worry. I'm gonna blow them all up. And then he leaves, locks the door behind him, and keeps her there. And she's like, no, don't go, Superman. And so then he drives up to the barn over the corpses of like 40 dudes who are all just laying there
Yeah,
bleeding.
it's just speed bumps.
He walks up to the barn and like
He goes
has
in.
the dynamite in a briefcase.
Yep.
And I'm
Which
not
he
entirely.
just throws an alarm clock in the briefcase with it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not a fan of this climax.
Okay, no, but here's the thing: you guys would like that was John Carpenter paying homage to the original because that's literally what it was.
Well, okay,
Is
I'm
it-
gonna
is
make
it-
fun of
is
this
it-
scene because he
Yeah.
walks into the
Like-
barn with the briefcase and they're all like, "Oh, he's trying to hide something from us." And they stare at him for like 5 minutes and they're like, "What are you hiding, you bastard? Why do you keep looking at the clock?" And I'm like, "Well, kids."
Well, they
he
all
keeps
go-
he keeps looking at the clock and he brought in a briefcase and you know he's hiding something from you.
no,
Well,
but
I like
together.
it though because like their species, they're so
Yeah.
used to being able to like read people's
read
minds
style.
Are
that
you
they
saying-
can't. They
Are
can't
you
like they have trouble reading like everything else about him. Like he's looking at the clock, so there must be something to do with the time. But they don't even think to check the briefcase because, as far
Are
as
you-
they know, it's just a briefcase.
Are you saying that
and
their
until they can
overconfidence
see
is their
until
weakness?
otherwise, because like they're not
I
used
think
to
he's saying
understanding subtle complex clues.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard any of that, but
I did.
No, we
I
did.
did.
No,
I
we
could.
did.
I
That-
could accept it, but I
that-
just want to make fun of him.
That makes
of
me
course
think
it's
of,
still not great. But
No, and I think that is what drives
Okay, wait a
them
minute.
is people's thoughts.
Wait a minute.
So
What I was gonna say is, you say that, but then I just remembered at the end when he's like basically telling the principal and the kid, "Run, get out of here," and the
Yeah.
kids still don't get it.
I'm not saying it holds together very well. But
But yeah, the principal busted out of where he locked her, and she gets there and just trying to take David off, and they keep looking back and forth between Superman and the principal's
Yeah.
like, "No, don't take
It's
him.
like-
What
and-
are you thinking?
yeah,
No, don't take him. What are you thinking?"
They all turn like literally at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of you can definitely tell that they're like together. They're one.
And you keep seeing his brick wall that he puts up, and they keep like
And
their
he's, like-
eyes are glowing.
And you can see that he's like struggling because they're trying to like get into.
and you
his
see they're
thoughts.
trying harder and harder because
Yep.
her face goes all alien at some
Yep.
point. You see all the veins and the translucent skin, and it's
That was
kind of
really
cool.
Which fucking,
that's probably my
it's
favorite
fucking
use
metal,
of that.
man.
It is. It's pretty rad. And so you see the brick wall beginning to chip, and finally, again, he's like, "Get out of here!" And she eventually gets David, and they run off. And the kids finally break through the wall, and they see the bombs and the timer, and they look at the clock, and they're
yeah.
like, "Ah, dang it!
Dang it.
Explosions!"
Which
All the
I
kids
love that.
die.
I do love that part because they're like, look at the timer. Oh shit! Look at the clock. Oh shit!
This is one of the only American movies I know of that has the balls to kill the kids, especially
yeah.
like from the 80s.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
except for
95.
Yeah,
Yeah.
95. Yeah, 95.
Oh wow!
Not
Wow!
80s.
Wow!
Aliens in 80s? What the hell are we doing tonight?
I would
Brain farts?
believe that
Balls.
this I would believe that this was from the night. Like I would expect that
this
from a movie
feels
from the 90s.
Yeah, this movie does feel very 90s.
Oh yeah.
Like it does. Like I watched a lot of 90s horror movies.
So
like,
the bad ones.
No, they're great. A lot of them were great. Like Candyman feels that way.
Candyman's good.
Like I don't know. I'm trying to-
All those others that you
Yeah,
can't
all-
think of.
yeah,
They're awesome.
exactly.
One.
all those ones.
They're so good. I have no idea. What
Doctor
they are.
Giggles. You know, it's all
Is
like,
that real?
Yeah, you never seen Doctor
yeah,
Giggles?
Dr. Giggles. It's a real movie.
What's
Thank
Dr.
you, thank you,
Giggles?
Sid.
You mean
Oh, yeah.
that's not an
Is it?
episode
Isn't
of
that the one with?
X-Files?
Isn't that the one with?
With the dentist who torments these kids in a building, and
Oh,
all he does is go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but isn't that the one with the white-haired guy? What's his name?
There's a lot of white-haired guys.
No, it's Durant off of Darkman.
Oh shit! You're right.
Oh shit!
I'm thinking of
Oh
something else.
shit!
So the barn explodes, kills everybody, and it's like, well, it worked. And then we see the principal driving off with David at her side, and he's like, we're going to drive far away where they can't find us. They drive through the town, and there's no one there. It's probably about to get blowed up real good. And
And that'll be the very last time we ever see Christopher Reeve stand.
aw,
Oh.
no, he blew up.
Yeah,
So
He's over there. He's flying.
he's flying.
He's flying. Just
He survived. He's Superman.
So they drive away, and then we get credits,
Yeah.
knowing that David will bring about the end of humanity, and it's
Yeah.
going to be all her fault.
Thank you.
Maybe. Maybe.
I'm being cynical. He seems chill. We'll be okay.
He's chill, but there's definitely
These aliens don't actually seem very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It was like they move through life with other people's thoughts, and like even with David when he was trying to become empathetic and stuff or whatever, he was asking how. Like he wanted to know like the thoughts.
He did.
You know. So I feel like that's what drove these aliens was they technically needed humans to pretty much keep moving them forward in life, you know. So, so what do you guys think of this movie? Not to give our ratings yet, but just kind of shoot shit.
I really love the idea of this movie of a town has a weird event, like everyone passing out. That's like
plot's the best part.
I actually think that itself is good enough to have a movie on, and then the whole alien.
Bless you.
The whole alien pregnancy thing could have been a different movie. Like, I don't know if these two ideas needed to be paired, but it's fine that they were. And I just feel like the whole idea of this is really good. I would have executed it differently. Like, there's not a lot of...
Like, what would
I'd
make
agree
you
with
do
that.
it differently?
There needs to be more time focused on, like, the relationships between the parents and the kids.
Okay.
Yes.
I know it seems like there's a lot of that, but they're actually, like I said earlier, with Mark Hamill,
I think you only really need the two.
You get a lot
Could you
with two
imagine,
families.
Like
we need to see the other families a little.
I don't think so.
Mark
Need to
Hamill,
play-
at least.
They need to at least play a bigger role than they do in this movie.
Yeah, because we don't. Yeah, we actually
the
don't
other-
know if Mark Hamill actually like totally shunned his child, just like because we see the wife as a radical woman at the end, and then we have Mark Hamill who's about to shoot the kids.
Like,
Yeah,
the other
see,
kids-
and I want
Yeah.
to know that
It's like,
instead of this
what got
priest
you here?
turning from 1 to 11. Like,
It's like, do they keep their kid out like a barn or a shed because they don't want him in the house?
Something interesting like that you can play with. And another thing is, I don't know. There's a few things I'd change.
really?
Yeah.
I see. My thing is, if I like rewatching it again as an adult, I feel like it needed to be more eerie. Like, there was times where I'm like, I wanted to be scared, or like horror movies don't scare me, but there was like it just felt like, okay, this is it's weird, but it's not like I'm.
No, I get where you're coming from, because John Carpenter, like, he does make scary movies, but his movies have a style to where, like, the movie itself isn't threatening, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say I ever feel scared during watching most of his movies.
Yeah.
I
I
think
do
this
with
should
The
have been
Thing,
direct.
No,
with
but
The Thing,
it's an
but, like, that's
eerie
one of the few
feel. It's just
exceptions.
an eerie
And I love
feel.
that eerie feeling.
But we didn't get it with this.
No, we didn't. And then we could have really well, because, this is a change they should have done. There's a Twilight Zone episode
Oh
of
my
a
god! I
kid.
thought he was talking about Twilight.
No, do you remember the one where the kid has like superpowers and
Yes.
it's like keeping all the
Yeah,
parents? and
it was
family there?
also on
The
Tales
movie?
from the Dark Side,
Yeah.
or no, it was the Twilight
It's
Zone
Twilight-
movie.
So if I would have made this movie, I would have made it more like that. Show that the adults of this town are basically trapped by these kids. Like,
Yeah.
they can't leave.
Yeah.
They're
Like, they're
basically
crippled.
slaves.
Yeah.
They exist for the study and amusement of the kids.
And it's like you see the parents like hiding something, like the kid like looms.
And we
in,
don't
it's
see
like,
any of
what
that
are
in the
you
town.
doing?
We
And
need
I think-
with the town itself needs to be more of a character.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just some general store owners like, wow, looks like the doctor's hating his kid. Well, good thing I don't have a wife.
I didn't have to deal with this shit. But yeah, that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Also,
And
the
it's
kid.
one of my favorite, like, I love these old black and white science fiction horror films. My favorite one of all time is Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Great
And,
one.
like, not only that, like, that ending scared me, like, for
yeah.
forever.
It's such a scary thought to know. It's like, okay,
Without giving
I'm gonna-
away the ending.
yeah, without giving
Never-
away the
yeah.
But yeah, it's
And
such a
I
scary
thought you were
thought.
about to edge towards it.
and I don't know why, like, when I was watching this and I knew it was like a remake of like an old black and white film, and like that film looked creepy, and I was hoping to get like the same feeling I would get like when finishing Invasion of Body Snatchers, and I didn't get that, and it felt like the ending was kind of like
Yeah,
not what I wanted.
I
you know?
agree. I agree. I think a lot of '90s movies, or even some of other horror movies through the '80s, it was like rather than just have this big scary thing happen at the end and just end with people saying, "Oh my God, what just happened? Did they all die? What is going on?" It's more like, okay, now they just left it off for like a sequel that is never going to be a sequel.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck? Because like, we're not going to see the sequel where David is in another town
Thank
dissecting.
See, and I'm
something or
fine
whatever.
with that.
Yeah,
I
oh,
don't-
definitely fine with that. I would be so pissed if they try to make a sequel off this movie.
You could watch I Am Number 4 and pretend it is.
Oh.
I wouldn't do that. I do not recommend that.
To do that.
Look at that. You're like,
A
no.
lot better.
And I know, don't do it.
It was a joke. Stop.
Stop. So can I just say, I don't want to be the asshole that says the kids can't act, but the kids can't act.
Well, a lot of them were.
All right.
It was
Really hard.
when it was a casting call for these kids. Like they just wanted kids. It wasn't like, hey.
I think they also wanted looks. They wanted like a
Well,
bunch of similar looking.
They wanted all the kids to
mainly
look the same.
mainly the person they really wanted to focus on is Myra.
yeah.
Is because
And
like
she was the best.
and they wanted her to use these big vocabulary words. Like if they had a kid that couldn't say those words, they
the
would
movie would have been
it.
much scary to me if they weren't doing that, like talking like adults. That made them just seem pretentious more than scary.
It made me
Yeah,
think
no, I
of
get
the
what they're going
2009
for.
Star
It's
Trek.
supposed to be unsettling that these kids know
Yes.
things that kids
But
shouldn't know.
it should be, but like I don't
It
know,
was
popular culture has
unsettling.
made it so you just hate kids like that instead of fear them.
I think the problem is the delivery. The delivery wasn't dry enough. You know.
I was gonna say like good kid actors could sell that sort of like big vocabulary sort of thing and make it terrifying.
I'd actually disagree with you. Like they're not great child actors, but for the time and I'm sure the budget this movie had, they're fine.
I guess the
They're
girl who played
serviceable.
the girl who played Myra, she didn't even think she got the part. Like she drove home and stuff, and they're like, "No, come back, no, you got the lead," kind of thing. You know, like
Wait, kids can't drive?
God, my God, Liam.
Liam never changed.
Gosh, and then of course,
To be fair, I was thinking the same thing.
and the only other actor of the kids who they all like. Well, Myra had somewhat of a like movie, or she became an actress further down, but I don't know much. But David was in the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street remake,
They
and
remade Nightmare on Elm
if you
Street?
watch the bonus on, did I say something wrong? I'm sorry.
You-
A
yeah, you-
Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake.
Yeah, that's what
Never
you said.
happened.
Okay, never happened. I wish, but he actually slams that movie in the like behind the scenes on the DVD or the Blu-ray on the Scream Factory release one,
Really?
and I was rolling because all I could think is like, you know,
Dude,
he's like,
you were in this piece of shit.
yeah, he's like, I'm sorry, like he's apologizing as he's saying,
Oh,
hey,
right.
I've been in this movie.
I will say I love this movie a lot more than Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yes, and I
Yes,
agree
Me
too.
too.
So luckily that wasn't a John Carpenter movie that we would have to put it against.
What if John?
So how does
Carpenter
this
did
how's
remake?
this stack up to other John Carpenter
I was gonna
movies?
say real fast that I like the soundtrack before we talk about that.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
he brings
Yeah,
his,
but that's not fair because
Yeah,
like
it's-
Yeah.
John Carpenter's soundtracks are
given.
always great.
It is
Yes.
such a given. But so I'm trying to think of all the ones I've seen, and I definitely think this is my least favorite Carpenter movie.
See,
This is my least favorite like Carpenter movie that's considered good. You know, because he's had a few stinkers, and the one I always like to reference is Waters of Mars. No,
Oh,
it's not
Ghosts of Mars?
Oh, Ghost of Mars.
I,
Oh, yeah.
I was
Mars
thinking
is
of
a
the, I was
Doctor
thinking of
Who
the Doctor
episode.
Who
I
episode.
take
Waters
back what I
of Mars.
said. I take back what I said. This is better than Ghost of Mars.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about Ghost of Mars. Yeah, that
I
would
haven't
probably
seen
take the
it.
cake.
That doesn't even feel like a Carpenter movie.
Is it Ice-T in that? There's a
It
rapper.
sure
in
is.
No, it's
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube.
that. Ice Cube.
You got the wrong
I
ice.
thought that's what you
Ice-T.
said. What did he say?
No.
No,
But they haven't
Ice
found
Cube is a
ice
better
on
rapper.
Mars yet.
No, but Ice-T's a better actor.
Yeah. Oh, really? I think Ice T is Ice T in everything he does. Like
Yeah, well,
he's
no,
like he.
you're-
Okay, go ahead.
You're not wrong, but at least he's had more credits and he's in more critically acclaimed stuff. Like, yeah, sure, at the beginning of Law and Order, he's not
Oh,
the best, but as the show goes on, he's pretty great.
I got even worse one.
What?
Escape from L.A. I'm
Really?
sorry. Escape from L.A. Not New York. L.A.
Escape from
That
LA
is the
bad, but
worst
at least
CGI. Bad story. Literally, there's
It's been
a
a
basketball.
really long time
there's
since
a
I've seen that one.
basketball
I-
showdown for
yeah,
his life.
no,
I'll have
you're
to get
not
back to
wrong.
you on
You're,
this.
you're forgetting surfing the tidal wave. You're not wrong, but I still
Oh, yeah.
like that one more than Ghosts of Mars.
Oh,
you
he
know?
did The Ward? I wanted to watch that one.
Oh yeah. Body Bags was awesome.
I love.
He
Body
did The
Bags.
Fog, right?
He did Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase. I didn't know that.
Maybe he
I did
produced.
not know that.
Let me check. I'm making sure.
But
We're on a
I
John
have to
Carpenter
say-
Discovery tour tonight.
I have to say
It was
My
directed
alt-
by John Carpenter. Holy shit!
Now he was a
my
career
all-time favorite-
director, and since he didn't do the big budget stuff, he had to constantly pump out movies.
I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to let Liam go.
sorry, I'm
Yes,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
my all-time favorite John Carpenter movie is Big Trouble in Little
So
China.
fucking good.
And like the thing
This
is like
movie's fucking
almost
amazing.
first, close second kind of ordeal.
Escape
I
from
think
New
my
York.
favorite's They Live.
Yeah,
Like it's kind of the
yeah,
similar
that's
situation
like-
where They Live
yeah.
is the number one for me, but The Thing is scraping up against
I've
it.
come to
Yeah.
kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of
And I'm all
bubblegum.
I
out of
actually
bubblegum.
just watched
If
that.
I'm not
time.
back in 1 hour, call the president.
I will still probably like Halloween. Of course, is my cheat. I'm going to always say Halloween is
what
my
kind
top
of
favorite.
asshole is John Carpenter that he has this many classics under his
Yeah.
belt?
And
Yeah, but it's the thing, they're all cult classics though,
Mm-hmm.
because every single time one of them came out, everybody hated it.
They never
Except
made
for,
money.
well-
for Halloween.
And now
Except for
he's
Halloween.
a bitter old
Except for
man, and
Halloween.
I love it.
Except for Halloween.
Halloween was the one good one, and that's the only reason why he got to make more movies.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say the one good one; it was
Oh!
the one successful one.
Oh, and one of my favorite John Carpenter movies of all time is Elvis with Kurt Russell.
Oh yeah.
I love that one.
He
And
and Kurt Russell.
one
are
thing
just
that I
good
loved
together.
about it was the fact that Kurt, like, even though he cast Kurt in like a lot of his movies, he was brilliant for Elvis because he looks like Elvis. And Kurt's very first movie was in an Elvis movie, and Elvis is
yeah, you're right.
and Vernon
God.
Presley played his dad. His real biological dad played his dad in
Oh, I
that movie.
love that.
Right before he passed away.
So that's
So,
our
I
review.
don't-
That's our review of
crazy.
Elvis.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm into Elvis. We could have an Elvis podcast.
I know it's technically not a horror movie, but I would like to talk about They Live sometime.
Hell
I would
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Oh wait, time out. It's a horror one.
It's
It's
a sci-fi
fear.
action.
Yeah, but it's still
sci-fi
but
action.
it's still fear. Like it's
If we
still
wanted
fear.
to shift to become a genre podcast, I would be okay with that.
I'd talk about
Sci-fi.
any movie really.
Horror.
I'm into horror.
There is
Fantasy.
one
I wa-
movie. There
Let's
is
do
one movie
Crow.
I want to.
No.
Hell yes, let's definitely do
Fucking
Crawl.
love Crow, dude. Anyway, should we get to the ratings now?
You
Yeah.
don't want to,
So
bro.
so we'll go ahead and do Jesse, me, Liam, and then
Okay.
Sid.
So
Yeah.
actually, you know what? Kind of talking about this movie made me like it a little bit more. Like
Yeah.
hearing a few things, hearing opinions. I
I
definitely
wish I got to watch it with somebody.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a great movie by any stretch, but it's not a bad movie by any stretch either. It's kind of middle of the road with some cool ideas. So I'd probably be happy around a 6, but it's like I would recommend this to somebody else 6. I would say like you should watch this. It's pretty cool.
So I throw that at a 7.
I'm happier with the 6.
6, okay.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yep.
See, I was gonna give this a 5,
Oh,
but
shit.
until same thing for Jesse.
It
until we
happens all the
started
time,
talking
doesn't
about-
it?
I just hate you guys. You guys make me like movies more, man.
Good.
You
Yes.
guys suck.
Give in
No, I'm
to
just
your
kidding.
love.
But I would give this a 6 and just put a check it out sticker on it. Just like a there it is.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Hey, if we still lived in the age of movie rentals, I'd say rent it from your local
Yeah,
Blockbuster.
yeah.
Yeah. Go to
Yes.
Family Video. They're
Or
still
Hollywood
Watch
open.
it on a Saturday night with some friends.
Yeah.
No, watch Big Trouble in Little China first, then watch Village.
Just have a Carpenter
shit.
marathon.
Okay, what's
I'd do that right now.
yeah.
All right.
So mine is, of course, I loved this movie growing up, and then of course I still love it because I'm bought it the Blu-ray, and I'd probably buy it even if it got to a 4K version or something. I don't know why they
I
do that.
doubt they would. Okay.
But what I was saying is, I do like John Carpenter a lot. I do like this movie. I wouldn't like give it like high like a 10 or a 9. But I'm gonna drop it to an 8.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I put it at an 8 because it is a movie that I would recommend to people that I like. Especially if they bring up John Carpenter, I'm going to throw this one into the mix. And then, of course, if Sydney had not picked this as his, I was going to pick it down the road. So it was definitely a movie we were
Would
going
you
to
have picked
stumble
this
through.
one or the original?
I would have. No, probably this one,
Okay.
honestly.
Really?
But yeah, just because like I would want you guys to watch the original so we can compare it a little bit, and I'd even tell our listeners to watch both as a comparison.
Yeah, and I'm
But-
sure I'm gonna change my
But the
rating.
but the thing about it is, I still think that this being a John Carpenter movie, this being a newer movie, and he paid a lot of homage to it. Like you'll see a lot of like similarities. Like you know, the brick wall there, the brick wall there, the briefcase, the dynamite, the, you know, like everything was like mirrored somewhat, but he made it his own. So yes, I will put it at 8 out of 10 and pass it on to Sid in California.
So here, 2 hours in the past, I'd give it. I think I'd agree with Jesse. I think I'd give it a 6. It's
Okay.
not quite bad enough for like a 5, and like I would watch it with someone again if they were like, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I've seen it." Like, I'd watch it again if it was with someone who hasn't. You know, one of those situations. I don't think I'd go back and just watch it again on a weekend night on a whim. 6 out of 10 for me. It's worth a watch, I'd say. I'd recommend it.
So, with our ratings out of the way,
Yeah.
it's time to say, like, talk to us at the email
Yes.
and the Twitter and the things that their names I forget. So somebody else.
Notice us.
So notice us. Go ahead, Sid. Give them all the information.
Mike in the Asylum 4 at gmail.com is the email you'd want to send it to if you had any questions, comments, suggestions, or whatever. You also check out our Facebook at that's just Mike in the Asylum, right?
Yeah, Mike in the Asylum on Facebook, and then of course
And Mike
on
in the
Twitter.
Asylum on Twitter. All right.
Yep.
I see.
And
So-
I was going to also say, you know, like, and if you're listening to this, you know, like word of mouth, spread the word, like, you know.
What
the
did you
word.
think of this movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pose questions.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah. So I
Eventually.
figure we with this, if anyone's listening, let us know your favorite John Carpenter movie, and we'll give you a shout out. Did you guys watch this one? Did you like it? You know, just let us know how you're doing out there.
And with that,
And feel
out of the
free
way-
to give us recommendations for movies in the future.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would definitely love to see
I
what
actually-
you guys would recommend.
I actually did get a recommendation from one of our people.
Really?
I'm not sure how much he's listened to it. I'm not sure if he's still listening. Hopefully he is.
Please,
But
please listen.
he brought up a movie that I seen a long time ago with Session 9. Did you guys ever seen that?
I want
I've
to.
heard of it. I've actually been curious about
Yeah.
it for a while.
I haven't seen it since it like first came out, but I know it's like a very like psychological sort of movie.
Okay.
But he was like, "Yeah, you got to watch that." So, give a little shout out to Mark if he's out there listening.
Oh,
So-
hi, Mark.
Oh, damn it.
Hi,
So
Mark.
now it's time for Liam to give his suggestion of the week.
You know, I was thinking over like what movies I should recommend, or what movies I should pick, or what movies I-
Muckman 2.
I
Muckman
will
2,
fucking
Electric
kill you.
Boogaloo. But all right.
Muckmen 2, too many Muckmen.
Too many
And we
Muck-
finally kill somebody. Finally.
Suck. Just kidding. They're fine. All right, but yeah. Do you guys want a ridiculous movie or a really good movie?
Really good movie.
I want a good movie.
Yeah,
All right.
stop fucking us over.
I'm picking the original Night of the Living Dead with George A.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just
I-
watched
I-
that
I'm gonna
last
pick
week.
that one myself.
I
That's a good one.
love.
I could
love
do
the
that right
whole
now.
Black and white. And
Yeah.
This is my favorite
They're
zombie
coming to
movie.
get you,
Yeah.
Barbara.
They're coming to get you.
We are definitely just prepare for many of those sayings because we're probably going to say it like 1,000 times
Oh, yeah.
during that podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So yep, that's
So,
gonna be the
look.
movie.
So,
there comes one of them now.
so from
And with that,
oh, go ahead.
I was getting ready to close the podcast. It sounded like you had something else to
Yeah,
say.
no, yeah, I was going to say from all the way from Topeka to California, we like to spread the love.
Soon we shall traverse the globe.
Yes.
From coast to the Midwest.
Yeah, and hopefully spread out. No, but yeah.
to get
Until
you.
next time, I guess.
Yep.
Have a good night,
You
guys.
all have a good night now.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.